Taito. We are here to talk about chapter 5. It's the last bit of story that we can talk about because the story isn't going to get its finale due to the end of service situation. Chapter 5 is the last piece of the story we got before things got cut off, and chapter 5 is not in the game. They just released the script for it like on their website, and it's only in Japanese. So today's stream is brought to you by Google Auto Translate. Okay. This chapter it's definitely like a hump chapter, and we'll talk about that like in the lower portion. So as usual, we are going to split this video up into two pieces. One piece for the story recap, and another piece for like the lore and actual like analysis of what happens in the chapter. So let's get into it, shall we? Let's get started. I want this to be a little bit shorter, though the past couple of videos have been a little bit too long for my tasting, so I'm keeping an eye on that clock. This one has to be a little bit shorter, so stop yapping, Hammy, and just get into it. Okay. Quick little recap of the general overarching story of Tribe 9 before we get into chapter 5. So this takes place in the metropolis of Neo Tokyo, which is modeled after the real Tokyo and its 23 wards. Within this city, there is a magic in the air that lets people have superhuman abilities, but it makes them a little bit violent as well. So a law was passed that demands people to resolve conflicts using baseball. They call it extreme baseball, XB, instead of using violence. And so people have banded together and they create baseball teams that they call tribes, and they're named after the cities that they reside in. Well, this villain named Zero had descended onto Neo Tokyo at some point, and he has little lasers from satellites in space that he can control, and he uses these lasers to dominate the city, dominate all of Neo Tokyo. And so what he did was he abolished the XB law, he restricted movement between the cities, and he introduced unique governing rules into the city, into the cities. And these governing rules are like death games that the residents have to play. Our protagonist, Yo Kuronaka, that little twink over there, he was kidnapped by Zero and held prisoner in Zero's floating castle called the 24 City. And during that time, Yo had lost his memories. Well, there is a rebel organization called the Trash Tribe that wants to take down Zero, and so they sneak into 24 City to try and take out those lasers. They fail, but they manage to rescue Yo. They get into conflict with Zero, and this spurs on Zero's extreme game, XG. And so Zero wants Yo to go to each of the different cities and to challenge his personal soldiers that he calls the numbers. And so Yo must kind of become the champion of the governing rules by surpassing each of the individuals, each of the numbers in each city. And so the general flow of the plot is going to each of the cities and taking on the numbers. At the end of it all, Yo is able to have any wish that he wants granted by Zero. Now during the prologue, Zero scatters the various members of the Trash Tribe to different cities to kind of like limit the number of allies that Yo has at his disposal. But as we've been making our way through the cities and Yo has been coming out on top of the XGs, he gets little mini rewards from Zero, and he uses these mini rewards to abolish the governing rules of that city and bring normalcy back. Well, it looks like after abolishing the governing rules, the restriction on travel to that city is also lifted. So any Trash Tribe members that were inside of that city are able to move across the different cities. I bring that up because by the time we reach chapter 5, we've been reunited with all of the Trash Tribe members. There are no like new members to visit to visit in a city anymore. Okay, all the Trash Tribe members are now freely able to travel within the city, but for gameplay reasons, Yo only brings a few of them at a time to each individual city. So chapter 5 takes place in Taito City. And so Yo brings along with him Miss Mewju Jo from chapter 4, Mr. Santoromita from chapter 2 and 3, Mr. Q from chapter 1 and 3, Miss Hiyori Ochiai from chapter 4, Mr. Hikaru Yotsuya. Okay. These are all the characters that come with us into Taito City. Now, Taito City does have a little bit to do with the anime, okay? There are two characters from Taito tribe who did appear in the anime, and we'll be talking about them a lot because obviously they appear in this story. If you're not sure about what happens in the anime, I do have two YouTube videos. Check them out at youtube.com/hammylime. We won't talk too much about the actual anime itself. These two characters, they have some involvement in the story, but like they're a little bit more on the background side. They're kind of like emergency characters. They appear to sort of rescue people in an emergency, and we'll talk about them. There's some sickening boys that we'll talk about a lot. So just like with all the other chapters, in order to get to Taito City, we have to walk through the underground railway. And just like every other city, the minute we step foot into Taito City, we get hit in the face with the governing rules. And so the governing rules of Taito City is a marketplace. So the things that everyone owns are sort of collectively valued. And so once a day, everyone must engage in like a barter transaction with someone else. And during specific points in time, the value of everyone's goods is checked. And the value of your goods can fluctuate depending on just the market, right? What people, the value that people perceive the things you own to be. And at these points in time, there is like a benchmark value that you have to meet. And if you don't have enough, if you don't meet that benchmark, you're executed. Additionally, there is a second part to these governing rules in that if someone is trying to sell fake goods, you can call them out as a scammer. And if you can successfully prove that someone is a scammer, they get executed. But if you accuse someone and you can't support your claim, the accuser gets executed instead. So it's a very risky thing. Now, the only thing that Yo has on him when he walks into Taito City is his XB ball, his personal little XB ball. And he trades that away for a free map. So he gets sickeningly scammed. But Mita, our little friend Mita, the reason Mita comes with us is because he's kind of like our guide from the anime. And so he introduces us to our two Taito tribe boys who seemingly at this point are actually former Taito tribe members. Our two Taito tribe boys show up and kind of take us under their wing. Ueno Yajirobe and Sakura Hanafuda. So these two boys, if you watch the anime video, these two boys did appear in the Taito tribe anime, and they were kind of these sickening, like, Sakura is an emergency muscle and Ueno is like emergency brain. Them showing up in the game is kind of a sickening moment. They would have been very hype characters, I feel, if we had gotten to this point in the game. But they take us to the end and they explain to us how the governing rules and all that stuff work and basically how Yo got scammed. And so we kind of realized that, oops, we gotta get some goods right away because Yo is gonna get executed because all he's got in his possession is a free map. So they do ask about who the numbers is in this city. What's going on with the numbers? And so Ueno and Sakura tell them about the numbers. And they say his name is Akuta Jin. Now, if the friends from chapter 4 remember, Akuta was the major villain in chapter 4. And at the conclusion of chapter 4, we had killed him. So how the hell is he the numbers in this city? So obviously everyone's in disbelief, so we are taken to the marketplace where Akuta is. And what's even more sickening is what Akuta is selling. He is selling human beings. Akuta jokes to Yo, the only way that Yo will surpass him is if he finds something more valuable than life itself. Now, ignoring all of that, we go on our little tasks, our little errands. Every chapter has like a little errand moment where you go around the city doing things like learning about some of the lore, getting, finding things out about the numbers and all that stuff. We go around gathering items together so that we don't get executed. And so after we do that, we come across this woman. Her name is Asagao. And Asagao is going around killing people, which is really strange because killing people is not allowed if it's not within the governing rules. She should have been shot with Zero's lasers, but for some reason, she is fine. She is going around screaming, this person is a fake, and then killing them. And so we confront her, and she has some suspicious words towards Ueno and Sakura, and we kind of demand them to explain themselves because we're also suspicious. Why would they have left Taito tribe? And so Sakura sends Ueno off to an errand, and Sakura starts to tell us about the history behind Taito City and what kind of happened. So when the governing rules first came into place, the Taito tribe stepped in and functioned as like a regulating force. They kept watch over the market to make sure that people weren't being scammed, to make sure that people had sufficient value in their possession. Basically, Ueno and Sakura were the ones keeping the peace in all of Taito City. Until Akuta had arrived, and Akuta started selling human beings. And this threw a major wrench in things. Ueno didn't really know what to do to stop him, and so Sakura, the buffoon that he is, decided to step in by trying to kill Akuta. Now, Ueno knew he was going to try to do this, so Ueno tried to stop Sakura. But in the process, Ueno was killed. And then Akuta was shot by the lasers. But the next day, Akuta and Ueno came back. So this is the first time we've experienced this off-screen, because we've seen this on-screen a lot, right? This happened in chapter 3 with Q, right? After he died as Ojiro Otori, he came back and he forgot who Ojiro Otori was, and he just knew himself as Q. In chapter 4, we had the same thing happen with Gio, right? Gio killed Ururido Furuike, and then he was revived by Zero, but he forgot he was in love with Miu. So now, off-screen, Ueno died, came back, and he didn't remember anything about the Taito tribe. And so that's why Sakura took Ueno and left the Taito tribe, because people were starting to get suspicious. Now, during this whole conversation, we realized that Ueno's been gone a little bit too long, and so they check the market, and lo and behold, he had been kidnapped by Akuta, and Akuta was selling him. Oops. So Sakura, in a panic, gives all his possessions to Akuta in order to buy back Ueno. After this, Ueno basically calls him an idiot and runs away. And Sakura just kind of sits down and accepts that he has no possessions anymore, and so he's going to be executed under the governing rules. Everyone kind of lifts him up and says, no, you can't just give up like that. And so we have another little period of errands to try and get things for Sakura to avoid him being executed. But we kind of flop this time. We don't really succeed, and so Sakura is, he just kind of sits down and accepts that he's going to die. When Ueno comes back with the XB ball that Yo had been scammed out of at the beginning. Sickening. And so he gives Ueno the XB ball, he turns on the TV, and on the news, they're talking about how Sakura Hanafuda and Ueno Yajirobe are rejoining the Taito tribe, and this news instantly makes that XB ball significantly more valuable. And with this, Sakura can avoid execution. See? I mentioned it briefly, like how Uno is like this emergency brain, right? Sickening emergency brain. To come up with an idea like that. So with this, everyone's able to breathe a little bit of a sigh of relief, but they still need to figure out what they're going to do about Akuta. Ueno has the idea to track down Asagao. Oops. So Ueno has the idea to track down Miss Asagao over there. And so we do. You know, it seems as though Asagao had been targeting people that were purchased at Akuta's market. She calls them fakes, and that's why she's trying to kill them. So we locate one of these people, and you know, sure enough, Asagao shows up, and we kind of confront her. We ask her what's going on, and so Asagao takes us to the place that she sees Akuta coming in and out of all the time. She kind of had been shadowing Akuta, and he confronted her and said some strange things to her, and this is what kind of spurred her on to start considering the people he sells at the market fakes, and that's why she tries to kill them. So we entered into this facility that Akuta comes in and out of, and inside of this facility is a laboratory with big like scientific vats and all that stuff, and inside of these vats are people. Yo even sees himself in one of these vats. So everyone has a bit of a sickening reaction to this. And so they leave, and they're confronted by Akuta, who rolls up with people who look exactly like everyone before us. And so Ueno kind of has the idea that maybe we can defeat Akuta by calling him out on this scam, calling him out that these people he's selling are just fake people. And so we have an XB match. That's a little bit sickening. It's a little bit silly, but like, you know, we have all this conflict, all this climax that bubbles over, and we resolve it with a baseball. Sickening. That's where all truths are revealed, right? And during our little XB match against Akuta, we learn that the people that Zero revives, you know, people like Q and Geo, they come from that laboratory. So Zero's revival is basically body doubles, replicas. Even at this revelation, Akuta doesn't seem to care, because Akuta finally reveals to us what his true goal has always been, and it is to convince Yo how screwed up the world really is, and to basically convince Yo to be his ally so that the two of them can take on Zero and kill Zero. Because Akuta, this completely unhinged individual, is someone who cherishes death. And in his eyes, a world where people can just be revived by getting replaced with replicas is the biggest hell that he can imagine. He hates it. He wants to get rid of this laboratory, and he has to kill Zero in order to do that. When Akuta became a member of the Numbers, his sort of mini reward from Zero was to have access to this laboratory. That is how he's able to pull people out from the laboratory and sell them in the market of Taito City. Now, what Akuta severely underestimated our little twink. Now, y'all have heard in the prior streams and videos how I consider Yo to be the secret main villain of this whole franchise. And Yo has a little crash out moment. Yo had another crash out in chapter 2, if y'all remember. He had a little crash out where he was talking about, like, you know, so what if people die? You know, I'm strong. I get to decide who lives and dies. So Yo has another crash out to Akuta's sort of proposal. And he says, I love this world. The idea that you can die and just come back, that's amazing. And so Akuta is a little bit disappointed. He's kind of distraught that he did all this, and Yo is basically completely opposite to him. And so Yo, as he's crashing out, he stands there and he says, Akuta-jin, the people you're selling are fakes. And so under the governing rules, I declare you a scammer. And so his claim is accepted, and the lasers shoot Akuta. And so Yo just stands before him like, it doesn't matter that you just got shot. You're just gonna come back as a replica. To which Akuta replies, no, I'm not. Because I broke the machine that was growing my body. And so Akuta collapses there and dies with no means of revival. Yo was a little gagged. Yo was a little gagged at that. He's like, oh, he got me. He got me there. But Yo then collapses. And when he wakes up, he doesn't remember the crash out, just like how he didn't remember the crash out last time. But after this, Sakura hands the XB ball to Yo. So it all came full circle. So at the very beginning of the chapter, Yo got the ball and was scammed out of it. Yo had his ball and was scammed out of it, and now the ball gets back into his hands. Sickening. And because the city had seen this XB match against Akuta, that XB ball is now the most valuable thing in the entire city. And so by holding that ball, Yo has become the champion of Taito City. With this, he's able to abolish the governing rules once again with Zero's mini reward. But the chapter doesn't end there. Okay. Yo goes back to the laboratory and he has a sickening private conversation with Zero. He asks Zero, the people who come back as replicas, Q, Gio, Ueno, they've all lost important memories. Is there any way for them to regain what they've lost? And so Zero turns to him and he says, that's a silly question, Yo. Look at yourself. Haven't you already started to regain some of what you lost? And Yo says, yeah, you're right. This laboratory, I remember it. This laboratory, this is where this world began, isn't it? This whole conflict between you and me, Zero, it all started here. What a sickening way to end the chapter on that kind of cliffhanger. Sickening. And what a sickening cliffhanger for the story to get cancelled on. Well, that's the story of chapter 5. Isn't it sad? Isn't it sad? What a fun little cliffhanger that could have been developed into something so juicy, but alas, the next time we'll get a continuation of the story is when the original creators decide to make their little fanfic and publish it. But until then, who knows when that's gonna be? Until then, we're gonna be left on that kind of sickening cliffhanger. Well, I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day or evening.